Hello, hi, I'm Larry Johnson from Texas A&M University. We're from the veterinary school, and so I'm here with some veterinary students to tell you guys about plants and animals, the cells within. These are the cells that make up your body, and we'll talk about those. We will talk about the differences in plants and animal cells. We will show you a little bit about some specimens of where these cells appear in the dog. That's what we're doing. Let's get going. First of all, I'd like to thank Sandra Martin, who put this presentation together, and she'll be illustrating the specimens to you today. Also, Dr. Clem, who wrote this piece here, which is on our website, peertamu.edu. Under a lesson there, Cells Are Us. So this is information that's on the website that can be used to talk about cells and plants. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about cells, some differences between animal and plant cells, and some similarities. And we'll start out with the similarities. In order for us to show the various structures, like the cell membrane, cytoplasmic components, we'll have to use electron micrographs. And here we can see electron micrograph of an animal cell, and this is of a plant cell. And so we'll look at those organelles in those. So basically, what we want to cover today is an overview of the cells. We want to look at differences between plant and animal cells. We want to look at organization of cells within the body, and a little bit about tissue overview. So those are our objectives of today's presentations. Now, how did the cells get their name, cell? Well, a scientist was looking at cork. You know, cork, like you go fishing with cork on the pole as a float. And so they were looking at that with a microscope, and they saw a series of little boxes you see over here. And so that reminded someone of the rooms that monks occupy cellular. And here we can see one of those. This is a room that the monks lived in, and they look very much like cells. So these are cells, these are plant cells that originally was seen as cork. Also, animal cells have a similar type structure. Namely, they have organelles inside there. They have a membrane on the outside, and they have a nucleus. And that's what we want to do, is compare the plant and animal cells. Now here we are. This is the universe, and here's a galaxy. Does everybody know the Milky Way galaxy? Raise your hand if you know about the Milky Way galaxy. Okay, there's a galaxy here, and here's the cells. These are cells in our body, and they're in the galaxy somewhere, and of course in the universe. But if we come on down the scale, we can see an organism, that's us, organs, tissue, and a cell. And so here's a cell in relation to the universe. This is a log scale of things. So we as cells are kind of small, but they're not as small as atoms, right? We have a lot of atoms in our cells. And here we can see, here we are, as we're standing here. Here's the cell that we're talking about today. And here are atoms way down there. So if you compare that, you can see that with an electron microscope, you could see atoms all the way down to cells. With a light microscope, you can see we can see frog legs, we can see cells, but with the naked eye, with the eye looking, we cannot see cells. So you have to use a microscope to look at cells. So cells are in the universe, they're in the galaxy, and they're in you and I. And so if we look at the different components, different organelles in the cell, we see that there is a cell membrane or plasma membrane that's on the outside. And that's a gatekeeper that opens up, let things go inside, or prevents things from coming inside. Also, we have the nucleus. Here we see the nucleus of a cell, and that's the cell's computer. That's what tells the cell what to do. We also have mitochondria. This is a single one. The mitochondria are multiple ones, and they are the power plant. They make energy. And here we can see those in these cells. These are mitochondria. And then there's also endoplasmic reticulum. And here we see endoplasmic reticulum here with these little dots on them. And that's your construction team. That's the one that makes structures, substances that the cell needs. And maybe secretions. It makes milk, or it makes the tears in your eyes, or it makes the secretions in your gut. And then there's also a Golgi apparatus, and that's the packaging department. And here we see the green Golgi apparatus that we see, and that has to do with packaging things. So we want to compare animal cells with plant cells, and here we can see where there's certain organelles overlap, and that's in the middle. Okay, so there's certain organelles overlap. Each one has cell membrane, they have cytoplasm, they have these. And then there's things that are unique. Things that animal cells that plant cells do not have. Things that plant cells that animal cells do not have. And we're going to start with the organelles that are common among them. And we start with the cell membrane, the nucleus, mitochondria, and the different components. So here we see an animal cell, and it has a membrane on the outside. It has some cytoskeletal components that are structural things inside the cell. It has a nucleus. It has these different organelles that we're going to talk about. And here we see a plant cell. A plant cell has a nucleus. It also has some other organelles that animal cells do not have, but it has some basic things. Endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi, mitochondria, vacuoles, some of the same things. So if we look at both the animal cell and the plant cell, we see that both of them has a cell membrane. The cell membrane is the outer part of the animal cell, but in plant cells, it's just inside the cell wall. There's a cell wall out there, and then there's a cell membrane. And so we can see those membranes in both of these cases are double layer phospholipids. And so this is one phospholipid right here, and there's a part that likes water on the outside and a part that doesn't like water on the inside. And that makes these guys want to line up like this. So you have two layers in both the cell of the plants and the animals. And the cell membrane controls the water flow, controls what comes in and what goes out. It also marks the limit of the cell. So it defines the cell, and it keeps the cell out of its environment. So it's the gatekeeper between the cell and its environment. In the animal cell, the cell membrane goes all the way outside the cell, and it marks the limit of that cell. In the plant cell, we can see the cell membrane again. The dark line that goes all the way around in through there is also the same as a dark line right in through here. That's the cell membrane of a plant cell. And so also both animals and plants have a nucleus. And here we can see the nucleus of the animal cell and the plant cell. Remember, the nucleus was a computer. And here you can see it's surrounded by a double membrane in both of these cases. And it holds the DNA. Here we see the DNA in here and here, and it is involved in cell division. The DNA directs ribosomes to produce proteins. That's why one cell produces some type of proteins and another cell produces a different type because of the DNA inside there. I mentioned to you it's double membrane. How did it get the double membrane? For that, we have to look a little bit at the evolutionary path. And remember, I don't know if you know these words, the prokaryotic cell. Have you heard of the word prokaryotic before? Raise your hand if you have. Have you heard of that? Yes, you have. Okay, a prokaryotic cell is one that does not have a nucleus. Okay, and then that brings us to the eukaryotic cell has a nucleus. So what happened in evolution was that the cell membrane that we just learned about got enfolded around the DNA, and that made the double membrane. So really the nuclear membrane was the cell membrane at one time. That's why you have a double membrane in the nucleus today. And so here we see the nucleus of a cell. This is an animal cell. You can see the nucleus and the nucleolus and the cytoplasm and the cell membrane. And here we can see animal cells and plant cells, and we're going to see the mitochondrion. And we want to look at a mitochondrion. Mitochondrion makes energy for the cell. We have a close-up view of a mitochondrion. There's Sanders holding up the mitochondrion. And if you look at that, you see there's two membranes in it too. There's an outer membrane and then membranes on the inside. And so those are a mitochondrion. And what they do is they can change shape. In fact, mitochondria are moving around is what they're doing inside of a cell. And they're also surrounded by a double membrane, just like that. As you see, this is a mitochondrion right here with two membranes. Again, if we look back at the evolutionary path, we see a prokaryotic cell here, and it was like maybe a type of bacterium or whatever that went inside of a cell. And it brought in the plasma membrane at that point in time. So in a eukaryotic cell that has a nucleus, they have double membrane mitochondria because the plasma membrane is really the outer membrane of the double membrane of the mitochondria. And so here we see a mitochondrion being one in a plant cell. There it is here, or we can see it there as well. Another thing that's common among the cells are the endoplasmic reticulum. And here we see a higher mag of endoplasmic reticulum here and here in the plant cell. Here we see the endoplasmic reticulum. Now the endoplasmic reticulum does different things depending upon what the cell type is. Sometimes they have ribosomes on their surface, and they're so-called rough with ribosomes. And these are for secretory products. These are when they make granules that are secreted. They make the casein for the milk that we drink, the protein in the milk. There's other ones that doesn't have ribosomes, and that makes steroid hormones. It makes you adrenaline that you have. And so here we can see they also produce substances for the cell needs or for secretion, and the ribosomes on the surface direct the secretory products. And the next one, this is an animal cell, and this is in your pancreas, one of the organs in your body with the digestive system. Here's the nucleus. This is a rough endoplasmic reticulum in through there, and then these are secretory granules. These would be discharged in the lumen, and we'll maybe see this pancreas cell later on. Also, another organelle is the Golgi apparatus, and here we can see the Golgi here and here, but also we have a model to show you the Golgi. Here is the Golgi apparatus. You can see it looks like a pancake. That you can see the different sides look like flattened pancakes, right? Is what it looks like. But what happens is vesicles move from one pancake to another pancake along the way. So vesicles come in from the top up in through here, and they goes from one pancake to the next pancake to the next pancake, and then finally release as the secretory products. Remember that the function of the Golgi was a packaging. That's the one that packages your secretions whenever you're going to have a cell that secretes. So that's what they do, they package. They also add sugars. Most of the proteins which are produced by the rough endoplasmic reticulum has sugars on them. And the sugars are added in the Golgi apparatus. And here we see an animal cell, this is the Golgi right in that through there and right in through there. So we use electron microscopy to be able to see those organelles. So we talked about organelles that are common. Now we're going to talk about organelles that are different. Animal cells versus plant cells. And we'll start with animal cells since we're with a veterinary school. Here we see that animal cells has vacuoles. And we see some little small vacuoles, so they may have waste products in there, or it may be for digestion, is some of the reasons that we have those vacuoles in there. And here in the electron micrograph, you can see the little vacuoles can vary in size. Well, another organelle is the centriole, and we're going to have a view of the centriole here in a minute. And the centriole has these 9 triplets. There are 9 triplets that we see there, but they're long tubes. Each one of those tubes is like a soda straw. These are the centrioles, and they are associated with cell division, and they're associated with organizing the cytoskeletal components within the cell. And here we can see in this animal cell, you can see the cytoskeletal components. These are like ropes that are in there that give shape to the cells. Plants do not have centrioles, oddly enough. So here we see the centriole in an animal cell. Here it is here, and here's a centriole with the 9 triplets that we just learned about, electron microscopic view of those. Also, there's lysosomes. Lysosomes in animal cells, they contain enzymes for digestion things. So when your garbage collecting cells or macrophages of the body gobble up bacteria or things, then these enzymes fuse with the bacterium, and the enzymes inside there kill the bacteria that is ingested by the cells. We all have lysosomes in there, but they're safely contained in the membrane. If something goes wrong with the cell will discharge it, and that will cause the cell to get sick. And that's what happens when you have a heart attack, is that the cell thinks it's time to die, and it releases the lysosomes, and that's what causes your cardiac problem whenever there's ischemia in your heart. So here we see in the animal cell, we see lysosomes here and here. Usually they vary in size, as we see there, but these are the lysosomes that you see in the animal cells. So we looked at things that were in animal cells. Now we're going to look at unique things that are in the plant cells. Okay, cell wall, one large central vacuole, and chloroplast. Have you ever heard of the word chloroplast before? If you do, raise your hand if you've heard of chloroplast. You have, yes. That is an organelle that helps the plant to make its own food, right? And so now we're talking about plant cells. One thing about plant cells is not only do they have a cell membrane, this dark line, but they also have a cell wall on the outside, which protects them. It's made of polysaccharides, which are sugars. It's a barrier for things coming through. Animal cells do not have a cell wall. And so the cell wall goes all the way around, and here we can see the cell wall on the outside of this plant cell. Also, they have a big vacuole. Look at this whopper. Look how big this guy is. It stores nutrients and waste. Also, it stores water, and it makes the plant rigid. Have you ever heard of a plant being wilted, and you give it water and it straightens up? That's because the in the vacuole is too little. And as you give the plant water, it puts water back in the vacuoles and then makes the plant rigid again, crispy. Like on a rainy day, plants are crisp because all their vacuoles are full of water. And usually it's one somewhere in the center, and it's pretty big, and it has to do with keeping the cell in this rigid box-like shape, characteristic of plant cells. And here we can see a plant cell with the vacuoles. What a whopper. There's a nucleus, nucleolus, cytoplasm, but here is a big vacuole in this plant cell. Also, there's chloroplast that you guys know about. Here, here, and here, and here. Chloroplast has chlorophyll in it, and this allows a plant to make energy from sunlight. So it takes sunlight with the chlorophyll, and it takes carbon dioxide out of the air. So the reason that plants can grow big, like in the forest, big trees, is because they get the carbon from carbon dioxide. And as a product, they produce oxygen. That's what we use as animals, right? And that's another difference between plant and animals, is that animals use oxygen, plants produce oxygen. Plants use carbon dioxide, animals produce carbon dioxide. And here we can see the chloroplast. This is a cell, and here we see the chloroplasts that are located here, which is going to make the starch that we have when we eat seeds and all. So we talked about things that are common between animal and plant, and we talked about things that are unique for animal and plant. But what we looked at was one cell of the animal, and we looked at one cell of the plant, but as a rule, plant cells are box-shaped. But animal cells are varied, and that's what we want to illustrate here. This is more about animal cells. This is one as a tall cell, a tall column, like a series of columns. There's one cell, there's a nucleus, another cell here. And then this is a round cell, and look how round this one is. This is an egg inside there, and this is a nerve cell. These are, just look at the nucleus here, so rounded, and look at the nucleus of these cells. That looks like an alligator, doesn't it? This is a nucleus. They're not all round. They vary in shape. And this one is light, this one is dark. They're different in the different cells. And remember, where the cell is in terms of an atom, there's many atoms and organelles in cells, right? And then tissue, organs, organ systems. So here are individual cells that we're seeing over through there. So if we look at the perspective of cell is the smallest unit of life. It's what it is. The smallest unit of life. It's protoplasm inside. Protoplasm is living substance, and the smallest unit is a cell. When a physician treats you, a doctor treats you, he doesn't treat you, he treats your cells. Think about diabetes. Diabetes is called one cell, the beta cell and the pancreas have gone astray. The rest of the individual is fine. It's the cell. If you get more than one cell that does a similar type thing, that makes a tissue. The body is divided up into 4 basic tissues. You either have muscle, nerve, epithelium, or connective tissue. And we'll talk about those in a minute. If you get more than one tissue, that becomes an organ. Skin is an organ. Kidney, intestines, blood vessels are organs. And then if you get more than one organ, you get an organ system. And that's what we have here, a system. So a cell is part of an individual which is composed of systems. Okay, it's the smallest part of life. It's a really important part of life. And here we can see the 4 different basic types of tissue. We have epithelium, and that's what you see in your neighbor. That's the outside of your skin. You're looking at their epithelium. Also, there's the connective tissue. That's the white of the eye. Can you see the white part of your neighbor's eye? That's connective tissue. Then there's muscle. We can't see muscle, can we? And nerve. We don't want to see those two unless it's damaged. So if we look at epithelium, it lines things. It lines organs. It's the inside of your blood vessels. Inside your heart, inside your arteries, inside your veins, inside your guts, inside your lungs, their glands. They are everywhere, and it's on your skin. It's the epidermis on your skin. There's also connective tissue, and they have a series of cells that look like little cigars that are here, and they make a product, collagen, that you see in the white of the eye of your neighbor. So these cells connect, they support. And then we have muscle, and there's 3 types of muscle. We have smooth muscle, cardiac muscle in the heart, and skeletal muscle, and we'll have a chance to see these muscles. We'll start with there, we can see muscle. This is smooth muscle with a nucleus in the center. See the center, the nucleus in the center, and these are like cigar-shaped cells. Those are muscle cells. The next one we got are skeletal muscle cells, and we can see the skeletal muscle, the nucleus is on the side, and they have little striations that you can see. We look at the end of one of those, we can see that the nuclei are on the periphery, on the outside. And what we see, the black thing there, is a blood vessel feeding that. Also, we have another specimen there that shows you where the nerve is interacting with the muscle. And this is a nerve on the outside is telling the muscle to contract, or in my case, is to tell me to talk. So those are the different types of muscle. We have smooth muscle, we have cardiac muscle, and we have skeletal muscle. These are different muscles of the body. There's also nervous tissue. And here you can see nerve. Some have 2 projections, some have many projections, and these are nerve cells here. These are cell bodies with satellite cells outside. So these are neurons, which are nerve cell bodies. There's also support cells. These would be satellite cells here, but they also cause ganglia cells in the central nervous system. And then we have nerves. Nerves are the tracks of the cells. So that these tracks that you see here, these lines that attach the cell body to the muscle or whatever is innervating are known as nerves, versus neurons are the cell bodies that produces the signal. And so those are the 4 basic types of tissue of the body. And we want to see those in our dog, and we have sections of our dog. This is a dog that we call Slice, and we can see a slice of him right there. Sandra's holding up Slice that you can see, and then she's going to open Slice up, and we can see. You can see the eyeball there, right up there. You can see the brain. You can see teeth of the dog. Can you see the tongue? If you can see the tongue, raise your hand. Can you see raise your hand if you see the tongue? Good. A lot of brain. You can see the nasal cavity inside there. You can also see the sinus. You ever had a sinus headache before? Sinus headache, right out there, that cavity. And so those, we're going to look at the dog. We call this dog Slice, and we're going to look at where the connective tissue is. Epithelium is on the surface. It's on your epidermis. It's on the outside. That's what you see in the neighbor. It's also in your eye. It's also the glands. This is a salivary gland. It's in your glands. It's also on your tongue. Projections that hold your food under your teeth. And we can look in a human. Here we can see epithelium in the eye, epithelium in your nose, epithelium on your skin, and epithelium lining your brain. Epithelium everywhere inside you. Okay, here we see the dog again. We're going to look for connective tissue. Connective tissue is the dermis of your skin. Connective tissue is your bone. Connective tissue is the white part of tissue. Whenever you're eating a chicken or a mussel or something, you see some white things on the outside. That's connective tissue that you see. And also your teeth are connective tissue as well. Connective tissue in humans, of course, the skull, the bones are connective tissue. Also, the cartilage in your nose is connective tissue. Also, your teeth, connective tissue, as well as the fat is connective tissue. If we look at muscle, we can see muscle here on the dog's head. There's also muscle in the eye that allows you to move your eye. There's also muscle in your skin. Have you ever seen a cat that was upset and the cat made its hair stand up in the back? If you've seen a cat with the hair stand up in the back, raise your hand. You ever seen a cat with the hair standing up? Okay, that's because the muscles that are in the cat's skin pulls the hair follicles up and makes it stand up. Also, the tongue has muscle. You can stick out your tongue, right? Don't do it, but you can because you have a muscle there. In the human, here we can see muscles in your chin so you can chew, muscles in your neck, muscles in your back. And then if we look at nervous tissue, where is an obvious place of nervous tissue would be, maybe less obvious would be in the eye, but also in your brain. Also in glands, there are secretions that the glands do, and the nervous tissue is telling them when to secrete things. Also, there's taste buds in your tongue. So these are all nervous tissue that are inside you as well as a dog, in your brain, in your eye, in your skin. Have you ever had chill bumps or cold bumps where you get indentations of your skin? I'm sure you've had that, and that's the muscle that's contracting in your skin that causes that to occur. Now we want to look at some different cells, and I hope that your teacher will go to this site to be able to look at these on your microscopes itself. So we're going to click here to look at some plant cells. So you can see these on your microscope yourself. You see how the image comes up very quickly, and this is a plant cell that we can see. And here we can go to a higher magnification and observe this. We can move this image just as if, just trying to get it in view. And here we can go up to 40x, and we can see these cells. There's the cell wall, there's a nucleus and a nucleolus, and these are cells that are divided. So you can observe these cells. These are plant cells, and you can observe they're the nucleus and the cytoplasm, and you can see that some of these are getting ready to divide, as you can see. So this is one of the ones that we could see, and that's plant cells. Remember, they're kind of box shaped. They have a nucleus and they have a cytoplasm. So the next one that we can see is animal cells, and these are from blood. This is from blood, and so we can see these blood cells. We can go to a higher magnification, and these are red blood cells. Here, these guys here, these small things there are platelets, but here is a white blood cell, and you can see the nucleus is dark and the cytoplasm of that. And here we can see other cells. You can move this around, and your teacher could pull this up on the computer to be able to see these cells that we have. And so these are white blood cells right there that we can see. There's platelets. These are red blood cells. And so this is normal blood. Normal blood has a few white blood cells inside there. I'm trying to find a different type of white blood cell. Of course, it's not going to come up because I'm looking for it. But here we can see that these white blood cells are different. This one is different from this guy here. This has a more lobulated nucleus, or is in different lobes or different compartments. It's all the same nucleus is still attached, but this is different from this round cell. So these are different white blood cells. So this is normal blood, and then we're going to look at abnormal blood. This is from an individual with abnormal blood, and we're going to look at that one, and we're going to see, first of all, you see there's a lot of blue, right? A lot of blue in there, and this is someone with leukemia. And what they should have in their blood, they should have the red blood cells, and they should have these other cells. This is the same cell that we were looking at a while ago, but these are immature cells. They should not have these immature cells in their blood. And so you can see the difference in those two. This is abnormal blood that we see. Again, we can see, I don't know if you can see that this cell here is a little bluer than these. So this is the reticulocyte. These are erythrocytes. So these are the normal red blood cells. And this is the first one that's released, the blue one, and we'll come back to that one later on. So these are animal cells that we can see in normal blood and abnormal blood. And also we can see cells in tissues. And here we can see there's different shapes of cells. Some are flat, some are columns, some are cubes, some have one layer, some have more than one layer and flat on the surface, some have more than one layer and columns on the surface. And so if we look at a piece of tissue, which your teacher could pull up too if you wanted to, this is gut. So this is a lumen, this is where your food would be. It happened to be in a rat, but this is a little piece of gut. On the outside, we have muscle. On the inside, we have epithelium. So here, if we look at the 4 different types of tissue that we were talking about, we have fibroblasts, which are connective tissue that look like cigars that we see. And there's a nucleus and there's a cytoplasm. And here we can see them in tissue, little cigars that are located in the connective tissue that supports the epithelium. Epithelium, remember, has different shapes. It could be flat, and that's what we have in blood vessels. This is a lymphatic, but it's a type of vessel. And then here's the flattened cells in through here too, as we see there, and up here, those are flattened cells, simple squamous epithelium. In contrast, in the gut, we also, lining the gut, we have these epithelial cells, which are columns, and that's what we see here. So this is much taller than this guy here, right? This is a flattened cell, this is a column. So there's one cell here, and another cell, another cell, another cell, that makes up the whole column. So here's nervous tissue right here, and then these are muscle on the outside, and we have muscle. So those are 4 different types of tissue: connective tissue, fibroblasts, epithelium, nerve, and muscle. So here is the intestine that you could pull up if you wanted to on your computer. You can go to the website and just pull it up just like I'm doing. You can change the magnification here, but actually I'm scrolling with my control, and we can see those. These are the flattened cells that we talked about. These are epithelial cells, and then these other cells are the columnar cells that we can see. You have to have a nice profile. Here you can see the columnar cells. This is one cell here, another cell there that we're seeing. And then if we go to another part, we can see the muscle. So this is smooth muscle in through there. This is nerve, and this is muscle in through here as well. So you can look at these specimens. These are blood vessels out through there, but this is a piece of gut that we can see. Another one that we can look at for looking for cells is the eye. And so this is the eye of a monkey. This is the cornea on the outside. This is the lens here. Some of the lens got pulled out by mistake, so avoid looking at that area, but this is a lens, and this is a retina, and this is your optic nerve coming in through there. So we want to look at these, and we're going to see the eye. And so if we move the eye over here and increase the magnification, we can see some things on the surface. If we look at the lens, we can see these cells on the surface of the lens. So we're looking at this part of this lens here. You can see that the cells on the surface are little cubes here. This is a capsule. This is not the same thing. These are the cells in here. They're little cubes, like little ice cubes. But whenever you go to this portion of the lens, these little cubes become elongated structures. And so you can see how they're elongated. These are the lens fibers that are inside there. And so we can see those structures on there. And if we look at the cornea, we can see on the surface we have stratified squamous epithelium, flattened cells on the surface, and multiple layers. So these are the different things that we see. So basically what we covered in this presentation are the views of cells, what are some differences in plants and animal cells, organization of cells in the body, and a little bit about a tissue overview. So we talked about the different organelles that are common. We talked about those that are unique. We talked about how cells fit into the overall scheme of things, and we talked about how animal cells vary in shape depending upon their function. So we're from the veterinary school, of course, and I just want to show you one more thing about how to evaluate this. This is a PowerPoint presentation. It continues with the one that we have online. What we're doing here is comparing cytoplasm and nucleus ratio. And the reason we're interested in that is because the nucleus, if it's very large, is usually an immature cell. So this is a red blood cell that we looked at before it got fully developed when it was immature. We just have these comparisons between animal and plant cells is what we want to do. This is a plant cell where we put a transparency over a computer, and we actually do this counting. Here we can see it. We count the crosses that land over the animal cell or the plant cell, and we look at the ratio of the cytoplasm versus the nucleus. This is a way that we bring mathematics into, so when we do that on a series of ones, we see there's 26 nuclei that touch the crosses in the animal cells and 29 in the plant cells. And when we look at the differences between these, the magnitude of difference, we see that they're very similar. It's about 1. So from that, if we did experiment, we would conclude that the ratio of nucleus to cytoplasm is about the same for both of these. I think it's getting time for us to ask some questions, but you can follow along these PowerPoint to go to the very end, and it has these cells where you can go to these websites and pick up these things and observe those at home or at school if the teacher wants to show you those. And I just want to remind the teachers that in the letter that Vince sent you, the note of this presentation, this is the PowerPoint associated with that activity. So we want to thank you guys for your attention, and we want to maybe answer any questions that you might could have at this time. So what are our schools that we want to ask for?
San Saba.
San Saba, do you have some questions you want to ask us? We have 3, I think, interactive schools. We'd be happy to answer some questions about plants and animals. We talked about organelles that are similar and some of them are different. Or is there another school?
Youngblood.
Youngblood. Would you like to ask some questions? If not, I want to show you my dog's slice, as we can see. And we can see the different structures in slice that you can see. You can see his brain, his spinal cord, right in through there. And you can see the vocal cords right in through there, and the tongue and the teeth. And this is an interesting tooth right here. It's so big that what happens is that if you have to remove it, the veterinarian has to break it before they remove it because it's so big. Okay? So we have any questions or any questions from the audience?
What about North Joshua?
North Joshua is another school that's interacting with us. Remember that we have 4 basic types of tissue that are in the animal and as well as in you. And we want to note that animals and plants differ, that humans produce carbon dioxide that's used for plants, and plants get the carbon out of the CO2, carbon dioxide, to make the big structures that they have. That's why you can make such a big tree, because it got the carbon out of the air. It didn't have to get it from the roots. It came from the air. So I guess if we don't have any questions coming in, and also all the schools have a chance to submit questions, and we will be happy if you would submit those online. We would read those at this time, since we're not going to get anything from interactive groups. So we just want to tell you thank you again for joining us. So this is part of the NIH-funded project, the peer program at Texas A&M University and the College of Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. Thank you.